Welcome to Tea Talks, where young adult stories and church experience blend into a beautiful insight to inspire us. So grab a cup of tea, sit down, relax, and enjoy while we spill the tea. And today I have with me my friend Guillian. Guillian, thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to talk about a topic that for me it's so important, and I'm going to get right to it. What are the unique challenges that a young adult faces today in this crazy, fast-paced community and interconnections? So what are the challenges?
There are too many to pick from.
Too many.
But I guess I'll do like top three. Number one, I think, is purpose. Just finding out, like, why am I here? What am I supposed to do in life? How am I supposed to make an impact? And I think sometimes we get so bogged down with thinking that our career has to be that purpose. And I think that's why a lot of us end up very unhappy. Because it's like after you did the software engineering and it's like, maybe that's not for you. And it's like, well, this is where I thought my purpose was. So kind of like discovering that can be a journey, and I think that God's overarching purpose for our lives remains the same, but it looks different in different seasons of our lives. And I think that can be a hard pill to swallow when God has said, you know what, this is the end of the season, now let's start another. I think oftentimes I'm really obedient when he's like, oh, this is what I've called you into. But when he has said, you know what, this is the end of that season, we're gonna start something new. I think I struggle a little bit with that because like, God, I came, I did it. I'm happy here. It's like, well, there's another leaf of that beautiful flower that's called life that I want to show you. And I think when we find our purpose in Christ, we also find a lot more about ourselves. And I think the second thing would be identity. I think a lot of us are constantly seeking who we are and who we're meant to be and how we're meant to show up. And I don't think we ever find out fully who that person is. I think that it's a journey of finding bits and pieces of who God created us to be.
And it takes a lifetime.
Right, and shedding who we thought we were supposed to be and who our parents thought we were supposed to be. Come from a Hispanic household and your parents know who you're supposed to be. So finding that identity that Christ has designed for you can be definitely a journey, and I think we struggle a lot with that. Also, I think the last thing we really struggle, not to encompass it all in just three things, I know we struggle with a lot more, are the expectations of those around us, the people that we love, and also even the expectations that we have of ourselves, of where we're supposed to be and where we're not, and if we're married and if we have children and everything else that Sally and Paul are doing. Like the comparison is definitely something that I think weighs heavy on us, especially because we live in a microwave society where we see Sally be a millionaire overnight and Sue has the best husband ever. I think that can be really tough to compare yourself and not find contentment in the blessings that God has given you.
Yeah, you gave only three, but I think those are three very, very important. And the last one, like about comparing yourself, I believe that social media does not help.
It's the amplifier.
It amplifies. You know, we always had those challenges. It was in different levels. Not that I'm the kind of person that completely against social media. I think we can use for very good things. But we just have to keep reminding ourselves that not everything they're showing on camera is actually what's happening.
Right.
Yeah. How do you see you as a young person or somebody else overcoming all of these challenges that young adults face?
I think it'll be really easy to say, oh, I just want them to go away. But I think it's part of the journey of being a human. I think if they all went away, life would not be as interesting. But definitely, I think it becomes a lot different when God is part of that mix, when you don't have to go at it alone. For example, like the mission of finding who you are, that's a very daunting mission. And doing it by yourself can feel like nothing feels right. But I think when you do it alongside God, there's like just pieces of beauty that are revealed, that even in your humanity, he has made you in his image and with a purpose. And to me, it's just really interesting how when God created the world, he said that he created us in his image. And God is a creator, so he also gave us creating power. And I think being like creating is not just, oh, I made this, but also like speaking life into someone is creating. And also bullying someone is destroying. So just like the power to create and give life, I think is really beautiful. And just like overall, it's really just taking it one step at a time. I think that there's a reason that God doesn't let us see the future, because he wants us to remain in the present. So when dealing with expectation and comparison and stuff, I think if I focus on what God wants for me, it's a lot easier, because I'm not looking at so-and-so's journey. I am focusing on mine and focusing on that, and I think there's beauty in that. That's not to say that sometimes it can feel like, well, God, you're blessing them so much more. But you don't know the prayers and the kneeling and the years of waiting that someone else has had on that particular issue, that you're just now seeing the blessing live out. So it's like everybody's journey is different, but if you focus on your own, it's so much more beautiful, because you have that closeness with God yourself.
And I love that you touched on creation, because even though we can have so many other things, like I can be a pastor, mother, wife, there's a list of things that we look at that as being our identity. But when we are reminded through the Bible that above all, you're a child of God, you were made in the image of God, that's your identity, and everything else is add on to it, It gives us a completely different view. But everybody, like you said, it takes a lifetime to actually understand these things, and it's a journey. How can churches help with these challenges?
I think church has a very integral part, because your community and your tribe and the people that you surround yourself are able to really push along those things. For example, I remember being a little girl in the church, and I really wanted to sing. No one in my family sang, period. And I remember just like struggling with that, because not only did I want to sing, but I wanted to sing well. So I would practice with the backtracks and the soundtracks until I got okay. It wasn't good. I remember practicing to learn how to harmonize. And I think the encouragement of my church family really helped me to develop those gifts. And I think there are a lot of diamonds in the rough in the church, and we're struggling with a lot. But I think if we had the little oomph from our church family to be able to develop more into who God created us to be, to find that identity, I think it would be a lot easier. And I think too, when I become more of who God created me to be, the more the comparison dissipates, because I'm able to just stand in my truth. Also, in the same token, with the singing, I remember knowing someone from the church that used to sing. She sings beautifully. I was like, God, why couldn't you give me that voice? And I struggled with that a lot. And I had to learn that everybody has like several gifts, and then there's that one gift that that person has. And I still was in my journey of finding mine. And then years passed, and then I think I'm finally arriving at what that is. And to me, I've always, even when I was a little girl, I could always talk out of every pore in my body. And I think I found that that is exactly my gift. Yes, I like to sing, and yes, I can do it. Sometimes well, sometimes not. But my gift lies in speaking and utilizing words. And it's like, I'm like, that's how that person must have felt, and that's why it sounded so beautiful. Because I think there's a difference between having a gift that you do well and a talent, and being anointed by God with that gift. And I think our church has a really important part to play when it comes to developing those gifts and pushing us to become not only the best version of ourselves, but the version that God created us to be. And just like calling us out in love too, because we mess up as young adults. And sometimes we need someone to just bring us back to that road we've been trying to trek on, that is probably a road of death. And I think that church overall, how God intended it, community, is to speak life into each other, to just grow in the trenches even when it's hard, because we will have disagreements, but I think we also can make each other grow and be better.
We have something in common. Well, actually, no, not really, because at least you can sing some, because I can't sing for the life of me. And that was something when I first came to the church, that's what I wanted to do. But I'm horrible at it. I just gave up. I came to terms that that's not my call. Yeah. But yeah, I loved everything that you mentioned. Very, very important points. Okay. Why do you think churches fail or are hesitant to prioritize young people or to allow them to hold leadership positions? Why do you think that happens?
I think it's twofold. I think there's one, the fear that they're going to be displaced, like the older members of the church, they feel like you're going to take ownership, and also that you're not going to fulfill the vision that they've had forever for what the church is supposed to be. And then the second token is that sometimes we have, as young adults, we have failed the church. We can be irresponsible when we're asked to do something, we may not even show up or even try to do it well. So that essentially like kind of dings in their hearts, and then essentially they kind of lose that trust. Not to mention that there are things that happen within our church family, especially with our young adults' lives, that the older members of the church may see like as a tarnish, or they start seeing you as a tarnish. And unfortunately, we haven't gone to a point where we can have those conversations that we are one church. And even though we may have generational differences, we want one thing, is to go to heaven and to call other people to go to heaven. And I think because of what we do on the day-to-day, or what the church is supposed to look like, we have forgotten our mission. And I think the devil has us there. We're in the minutia, in the details, and the carpet is red. And I don't like certain things about how they do things, and I'm not gonna allow them to do these things because I don't feel that's how church is supposed to look like. And I think we are too into the details that we have forgotten what the point even is. So I would say that it's twofold. I think together as a Church of Christ, we need to be one people with one voice, with one mission, and I think we're a work in progress. I think there's a lot of miscommunication, and the expectations are different on both sides of the plane. And I would say that if we had a little bit more conversations, we would begin trusting each other a little more and give ownership. I don't think it should be only young people owning the church. I think it should be all of us owning the church and holding positions in which everybody's voice can be heard. Because I also believe that older members of the church have experience to share, which is something that we can't say as young adults. And then young adults, we can bring fresh ideas. So I think we both have a part to play. I just think that sometimes we don't communicate really well.
Yeah, that's right. And you said it right, that it's not just that we should only be focusing on the young people, but if the priority is actually to obey God's call to all of us, which it is to be missionaries, to make disciples, then the older generation, instead of wasting time with some details that are not that important, if we're doing our job as in the mission, then everything else would fall in place, right? You touched a little bit about, well, the lack of communication and the lack of trust. How do you think trust can be built?
The thing about trust is that one little thing can destroy it, but it takes many little actions to build it. So I think the best way to build trust is not only through communication, but also doing those little actions, even though they may not be recognized. Because I think one thing that we carry as young adults is that chip on my shoulder. They didn't even look at me. They didn't even say thank you. And it's like just reminding yourself that the reason that you're doing it is not because of them, it's because of Jesus. And your stars are in heaven, not here. So just continuing to build that trust in whatever way you can do, even when you don't see it from the other side. Because I believe that starts to soften. It's just like when you find a little stray dog in the street. They don't want to touch you, they don't want to eat from you, even though that's exactly what they need. But eventually, after serving them enough, they start gaining that trust. And I think a lot of us are scared of how painful that journey is going to be and the rejection. But I think we're called to do what we need to do, and despite what's happening externally. And even if they never admit that they saw the work that we did, I know that also impresses in their heart, and that builds, because it's not only about you. Like, you may grow up and you may leave that church, but you built something that now another young adult can come in, and you've created a good foundation, and now they may finally be open to the work that needs to be done. So
I love that you are not saying that one side only responsible or only the other side. It's not just the older generation that is not giving opportunities to the younger generation, but it's also the younger generation that is really not investing or committing. So there's always two sides of the story. And it's important for us to see that. Yes, the older generation needs to let go of a little bit, allow the young people to make mistakes, allow the young people to take responsibilities. But on the other side, the young people also need to, hey, when a responsibility is given, how serious am I taking this? You know, so I love that you have the balance between the two.
Or even saying yes. I think a lot of us would say no because we don't think that we're capable, because we don't know how it's going to turn out, but that's the only way to learn.
Yeah.
I think, like, when we see even people that have grown in the church and how many gifts they have been able to develop, it's because they said yes.
Yes.
So,
what would you say to a young person that is struggling with these issues?
I would say I have a rule for myself. Like, anytime that I'm asked to do something, especially in the church or in the realm of anything God related, I'm not allowed to say no. Because every single time, what I find on the other side is Jesus just pouring into me. So I think that there's a process. Yes, I know a lot of us are empty in the sense that we feel like we have been beat down and we hurt and our emotions are all over the place and we're going through difficult situations and it feels like we literally have nothing to give. But also in that giving, something is poured back in and something that you didn't even expect. So put yourself out there. It doesn't have to be preaching. It doesn't have to be singing, because I think a lot of us, when it comes to working in the church, we want something that is showy or very front-facing. It could be moving chairs. It could be greeting. So don't close yourself off to what God may be asking of you, even though it may feel like it's not something that you enjoy. Like, for example, children are not my strong suit, and I'm constantly being asked to teach children's story or teaching the primaries and the children classes, and I'm like, oh, that's not necessarily something that I enjoy. But if you're asked to serve, do so to the best of your ability. Don't judge yourself for how bad or how well you're going to do. And also for the older generation to be there. To, when we fail, pick up our slack sometimes and mentor us to be better. Hey, I noticed you did this. This is how you could have done better. So I would say, don't say no. And sometimes it's not even the no's from the people in the church or a leadership position. Sometimes it's literally you're on the street at the gas station and God tells you, talk to that person. So just be open to what God is calling you to do, and you don't know what you may find on the other side. It's building something in you.
Love it. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Guillian, this has been refreshing. I loved hearing you, and I am so happy that you accepted to be part of this, joining us at Tea Talks. Thank you so much.
It's been great.
And thank you for joining us. I will ask you to keep stirring up the conversation and embracing the beautiful and the best messiness of life. Thank you, and until next time.